needle drops in a room nobody remembers building. Two labels once fought a war for the sound of your soul, and you were never told you were the prize. One rose from a bungalow on Detroit's West Grand Boulevard, chasing perfection on an assembly line. The other rose from a cramped office in Manhattan, chasing the sound of a person breaking open in real time. This is Motown versus Atlantic, and the artists caught in the crossfire between polish and pain. Subscribe now. Because before this countdown ends, you'll hear how a woman ignored by one empire became untouchable in another. The countdown begins now.
Don't you feel like crying?
Number 10, Mary Wells, My Guy.
Make me untrue to my God.
Detroit, 1964. A 20-year-old stands at Hitsville, USA, and delivers Motown's first true chart topper, a song so massive, the Beatles handpicked her to open their UK tour.
My God.
Inside the building, though, Berry Gordy was already redirecting her promotional budget toward 4 young women he was grooming to replace her, a group called the Supremes. Wells knew one legal fact Gordy had forgotten. She'd signed her original contract at 17. A minor's signature carries less weight in court, and by 1965 she used it to walk free. Gordy reportedly offered her 50% of Motown to stay. She took a flat $30,000 buyout instead, signing away every future royalty from My Guy, a song that would earn millions long after she couldn't touch a cent of it. She died decades later fighting cancer without health insurance, her hospital bills covered by donations from old label mates. Silence like that wasn't unique to Detroit. Down in Alabama, a different label was learning what happens when you let the fury inside an artist run loose instead of taming it. Number 9, Wilson Pickett, In the Midnight Hour. Muscle Shoals, 1965. Wilson Pickett walks into a converted tobacco warehouse and screams into a microphone like the building owes him something. 2 labels had already dropped him. One executive called him unmanageable in writing. Atlantic's Jerry Wexler heard that same fury and pointed a microphone at it instead of sanding it down. In the Midnight Hour wasn't polish. It was a threat wrapped in a groove, and studio musicians who worked with Pickett described walking on eggshells around a temper that matched his voice note for note. The rage that got Pickett blacklisted from the industry's polite side is the exact ingredient that made him a legend on its raw side. Atlantic didn't discover his talent. They discovered his talent and his temper were the same instrument. That same tension between an artist a label can control and one it can't was about to detonate inside Motown's most beloved group. Number 8, David Ruffin and the Temptations, My Girl. 5 men, 1 harmony, no ego allowed above the group. That was the Temptations' entire promise. David Ruffin's lead vocal on My Girl turned that promise into gold. Success broke the arithmetic. Ruffin rode to shows in a private limousine while his bandmates shared one and demanded the marquee read, "David Ruffin and the Temptations." His own group said no, and by June 1968, after missed shows and a mounting cocaine habit, they fired him themselves. Ruffin didn't leave quietly. He showed up at venues afterward, sneaking on stage during songs he used to sing, forcing security to drag him off in front of crowds still cheering his name. Still bound by an individual Motown contract, even after his own group fired him, Ruffin spent his final years bouncing between labels and addiction, dying of a cocaine overdose in a Philadelphia crack house. The label that engineered five-part harmony never engineered a safety net for the men inside it. Motown wasn't alone in watching brotherhood collapse behind the curtain. At Atlantic, two men singing about unity were living as strangers. Number 7, Sam and Dave, Soul Man. Sam Moore and Dave Prater sang like two halves of one soul. Soul Man became a 1967 anthem so tight it felt like eavesdropping on old friends. Off record, the two barely spoke, writing separately, touring separately, communicating for years mostly through their manager. Signed to Stax but distributed through Atlantic's much larger machine, both men stayed confused about who was paying them and how much they were owed, fighting royalty disputes long after the hits stopped coming. Prater died in a car accident in 1988. Moore has spent decades since performing Soul Man solo, singing both halves of a conversation with a man he barely knew off stage. If two grown men couldn't hold that together, imagine four young women whose entire identity was built around a single spotlight. Number 6, Diana Ross and the Supremes, Where Did Our Love Go? Florence Ballard had the group's biggest voice and its founding role. Diana Ross had Berry Gordy's undivided attention. By 1967, the marquee read, Diana Ross and the Supremes, and Ballard watched her role shrink song by song until Motown fired her, replacing her so smoothly fans in the front row couldn't tell the difference. Ross became one of the most successful solo artists in American history. Ballard went home to Detroit on a settlement so small she was soon living on welfare, blocks from the label that made her famous. Ballard died in 1976 of cardiac arrest at 32, buried close enough to Hitsville, USA, that you could walk from her grave to the building where she once sang lead in under 15 minutes. Motown's assembly line could manufacture stars and discard the parts it no longer needed. At Atlantic, one man wore an actual crown, and almost nobody remembers his name today. Number 5, Solomon Burke, Cry to Me.
Don't you feel like crying?
Philadelphia, 1964. Solomon Burke performs in a velvet cape and an actual crown, and nobody laughs. A New York DJ had christened him King of Rock and Soul on live radio, and the title stuck for life.
Come on, cry to me.
An ordained bishop before he was a singer, Burke brought pulpit fire straight into Atlantic's studios, becoming the label's proof that gospel-rooted voices could dominate secular radio, years before Aretha Franklin ever walked through the door. Financial disputes over unpaid royalties pushed him out of Atlantic by the late 60s, right as the sound he pioneered exploded into the mainstream through artists who followed him. The man nearly every soul historian credits as the true architect of Atlantic's sound left the label broke, sold off side businesses just to survive, and died in 2010 on an airport tarmac in Amsterdam, still touring at 70 because he never stopped needing the income. The king who built Atlantic's throne barely got to sit on it. At Motown, a different kind of royalty was about to fight the label itself, just to be treated like an adult.
Don't you feel like crying?
Number 4. Stevie Wonder, Superstition. Motown signed an 11-year-old blind kid from Saginaw in 1961 and marketed him as a novelty act, locking him into a contract with almost no control over his own masters or royalties. Then he turned 21. Under Michigan law, every dollar held in trust for him became legally his, and so did his leverage. He walked into Gordy's office, not as a child star, but as a man who knew exactly how much the label had made off a voice he'd owned since before he could vote. He demanded full creative control and ownership of his publishing. Terrified of losing his most gifted artist, Gordy agreed to nearly everything. Stevie Wonder had to threaten to leave the only label he'd ever known just to gain rights white artists his age received automatically. His 21st birthday wasn't a celebration inside Motown's walls. It was a negotiation the label knew it couldn't afford to lose. Writings on the wall. Motown learned it could bend for an artist it couldn't replace. In Georgia, an Atlantic-adjacent artist was about to prove some voices only get heard after it's too late for applause. Number 3. Otis Redding, Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay. Watching the ship. December 7th, 1967. Otis Redding records Dock of the Bay, whistling the outro because he hadn't finished writing the final verse. He told the engineers he'd fix it later. 3 days after, his plane went down in the icy waters of Lake Monona, Wisconsin. He was 26. Atlantic and Stax released the song posthumously in early 1968. It became Redding's only #1 pop hit. His biggest record arrived in stores after he was already gone. Its unfinished whistle preserved forever because there was no one left to replace it. Watching the tide roll away. Every time that song plays, listeners hear an artist's actual last unfinished thought, immortalized by an accident nobody saw coming. Not a stylistic choice, but a placeholder that became permanent. An unfinished song became a masterpiece by circumstance. At Motown, one artist was about to fight his own label just for the right to say something true. Number 2. Marvin Gaye, What's Going On? By By 1970, Marvin Gaye had given Motown a decade of polished duets. Then his brother came home from Vietnam, and his singing partner Tammy Terrell collapsed in his arms on stage before dying of a brain tumor at 24. Gaye wrote "What's Going On," a song about war and a broken world, and brought it to Berry Gordy, who called it the worst song he'd ever heard and refused to release it. Gaye refused to record anything else until Motown put it out. Months of standoff followed between the label's most reliable star and the man who built the label, until Gaye won, and Motown released it with no promotion, expecting it to flop quietly. It became one of the fastest-selling singles in the label's history, and the album is now regarded as one of the greatest ever made. Motown almost buried its own masterpiece because it didn't fit the formula that made the company rich. Marvin Gaye had to fight his label, to be honest. Our final story belongs to a woman who had to leave one label entirely just to be heard.
We don't need to escalate.
Number 1. Aretha Franklin. Respect. Columbia Records had Aretha Franklin for 6 years and never knew what they had. Nightclub gowns, jazz standard arrangements, someone else deciding every note. 10 albums, almost no hits, nearly $90,000 lost. By 1966, they were ready to let her go. Atlantic's Jerry Wexler was waiting. He sat her at a piano and asked what she wanted to play, stripped the orchestration, let her gospel roots lead. In January 1967, they recorded, "I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You." Weeks later came Respect, a song Otis Redding himself had written and recorded 2 years earlier. Franklin rebuilt it from the inside, turning a man's plea into a woman's demand, and when Redding heard it, he reportedly said only, "I just lost my song." The label that discovered the greatest voice in American music was actually its second owner. Columbia sat on Aretha Franklin for 6 years and never heard her. It took Atlantic, and a producer willing to stop telling her what to do, to prove the industry had been wrong about her from the start. That's the whole war in one artist. One label that built a cage, another that opened the door.
And guess what? So is my mind.
Every song on this list was a letter mailed to a future its singer wasn't sure they'd survive to see. Motown built the machine. Atlantic broke it open. And the artists caught between them paid in royalties they never collected and lives that ended before the world finished listening. Tell us in the comments which story hit you hardest, and subscribe. Because we are not done uncovering these voices.
Oh, don't you feel like crying?
The music never lies, even when the industry does.